we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to just go ahead and change this slide to an agenda slide. And Kelsey, I can see you. Can you confirm for me with a thumbs up if the slide changed on your screen? Awesome. Just to give you guys a quick background, I'm about to run through the agenda, but I do want you to know, like, hey, why is this guy speaking to us? Why, why is Kelsey not speaking to us? So yeah, I've been at ACS for almost 8 years. I've got a heart for the church. I've got a heart for you guys. I primarily work with large churches. I primarily work with your denominational offices, associations. Just a little bit of my background. So this is stuff that I'm speaking with pretty consistently to conferences, associations, national offices, that sort of thing. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to start with just a general introduction into church communications. We're going to highlight really its importance in fostering connection with your congregation. We're going to explore the significance of segmentation and personalization. You may have seen that on the main slide screen. And really, we're going to be kind of talking about that in the sense of crafting tailored messages for different audiences, aka segments, segmenting folks. Then what we're going to do is we're going to discuss some tools for effective segmentation and personalization. Specific tools that we have, but some of it can be applied globally if you are not a current user of any of these ACS technology softwares. And then we'll follow that up with talking about key metrics to track success on communication. And then lastly, what we'll do is, I already mentioned it, but we'll open up kind of a Q&A session that you guys can post questions. I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll just talk. Well, you guys will type, I'll talk. But it'll be a chance for other people to hear some of the thoughts that are on you guys' mind and what some of our answers may be to those questions. So let's start. Church communications. Church communications, obviously, as you guys know, are crucial to keeping your congregant informed, engaged, connected, all of that sort of stuff. It can be events, it can be inspirational messages. You could be providing important updates to your congregation, health updates, staff updates, and ultimately it boils down to effective communication is essential for you guys building a strong community within your church. And of utmost importance with that, speaking to the right audience with the right message is one of the most vital things for it to be relevant and effective. So let's break this down kind of piece by piece. We're going to look at this kind of from a secular standpoint. And then what we'll do is we'll transition it into the church world. So let's start with a simple definition. What is market segmentation? I'm going to pause for a second. I'm not going to ask you to type out your definition of market segmentation. I couldn't read through 100 of those or 200 of those. But I want you to think for a second, what does this mean to you if you've never heard this term before? So I am going to provide a definition for you in case this is something that you've not heard. But this is a definition from a company called Investopia. So if you ever look up finance stuff, this is a company that does that. But they define market segmentation as a way of aggregating prospective buyers into groups or segments based on demographics, geography, behavior, psychographic factors, all in order to better understand and market to an individual. Another definition says it is segmentation, that is a marketing strategy that uses well-defined criteria to divide a brand's total addressable market into smaller groups. Each group or segment shares common characteristics that enable the brand to create focused and target products, offerings, and experiences. So when we look at that definition, we think about that definition. This is a very secular definition, but to divide a brand's total addressable market into smaller groups. basically, to apply it to you guys, how do we look at our holistic congregation? How do we look at our holistic mission fields, our community around us? And how do we divide that up into smaller groups? Do we divide that up through ages? Do we divide that up by income ranges? Yeah, suspected income ranges, I would say. What are some common characteristics that we can use to focus and target you guys' offerings and experiences as a church? I'm going to give you some practical examples though. If any of you have kids, and you might actually be able to hear mine right now, working from home is a blessing sometimes, but other times it's not. But if you've got kids and they are watching a cartoon on a Saturday morning, you're not going to see a golf club company advertising their clubs on a commercial on that channel. It'd be wasted money. Really what you see is an ad or a commercial for the latest Nerf gun, toy, action figure, doll, and then they give you that price that's a really insignificant price, and then it always says plus shipping and handling. Your kid runs to you and says, "Hey, can we order this toy? It's only $19.99." That's an example of an organization segmenting their market, looking at kids, but also pulling parents' attention. Another one I can think of is us here at ACS Technologies. A few years ago, I attended a pastor's conference. We didn't go off showing our database. We didn't go off showing everybody what Realm can do and all of these things. What we did, and I did this, is I drove two ginormous TVs that would go on their sides, and we made it look like an iPhone, and we had our pastor's app up on there because we wanted to make it relevant to a pastor. And that app does things, of course, that makes their life easier day in and day out. So that's another example of what market segmentation can be. So let's think about, you guys. We're at a time, we have Easter coming up this Sunday, 4 days away. Good Friday is tomorrow. Think about the things that you're doing right now. How are we promoting our Easter services? How are we promoting the things that we have going on as a church? And then you think about, most people, I'm not saying every one of you, but I would bet the majority of you guys have something in your newsletter for your Easter services. You probably have something on social media with, days and times, that sort of stuff. But really, when we think about it, who we're communicating with are both members of our church, guests of our church. We're promoting this to believers and non-believers. So how can we, think differently about how we communicate? And that's what this webinar is all about, and that's what we're about to dive into. But I do want you to think about that. Think about how your church is doing it right now. And then think about, the church that you work for. Think about the churches that you've attended in your life. All the things that they have going on, you guys have going on. You guys have Vacation Bible School. We're going to use that example a lot today, by the way, because I know a lot of you are in full prep mode for that. But you got Vacation Bible Schools. We've got, dinner fundraisers. My church had one we called the Sweetheart Banquet every Valentine's Day, and that raised money. The youth served. It was a fundraiser. We have child cares like Mother's Morning Out. We have youth camps, sermon series. I could name 1,000 different things that you guys do as churches that you communicate out to people. And by segmenting your audience based on demographics, interests, things like that, you guys, through segmentation, through personalization, can deliver messages that resonate with the specific groups within your congregation. So let's take a look at, one of those examples that I just gave. Parents Morning Out. Hey, we're doing something. I've seen some churches, it's a common thing that they do every week, Tuesday through Thursday. Other churches, they do it around Christmas on like a Saturday so parents can go Christmas shopping, that type of stuff. What a lot of churches do is you place it in that section of the newsletter, send that newsletter out, you put it on social media. I kind of gave that example with Easter. And that's not bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't want you to say, hey, we're not doing it right. It's not bad because it doesn't cost you guys anything extra to add it in your newsletter. It doesn't cost you any extra to place something through your church's social media pages. However, what if in addition to that, you guys were to use your church database and you run a search on individuals that are listed as parents, and we send it directly to them? That's a very minor piece of segmentation. It's a very, very small piece. And honestly, it kind of sounds like common sense to an extent. But let's take it to the next level. And let's start talking and really starting to get more into the weeds and to the advanced world of segmentation. And that's through personalization of the message and how we deliver it. So you see, personalization and tailored messaging takes this step a little further, not just by promoting the content or putting content out, but you're tailoring the communication to individual folks by making them really feel valuable, making them feel understood. We're promoting something with kids to parents, not just to the general public. And so 2 examples I'm going to put up here are different ways in which we can tailor our content to someone. We can tailor our content through verbiage that's used. So what we say, I can't help you with that one, by the way. I'm not a wordsmith. But the other one, the big one, is the method of communication. So the method of delivery of whatever we're trying to communicate out. And so when we think about method of delivery, we've got different communication channels. You guys have social medias, you have emails, you have snail mail, and then these last 2 are a little bit less relevant to the church, capital C church. Not many of us do things on radio and TV, but all of these are just different avenues and channels to get your message to a specific audience based on who the audience is. And then, of course, based on who the audience is going to determine what channel you use and leverage to reach out. So this is a really big one. We're going to spend a ton of time here in the communication channels because this is super important. This is where you do spend money sometimes through radio or TV, snail mail, social media ads. There is money spent here from churches quite often. So we're going to spend a lot of time here. But I want you to think, once again, let's go back to a secular example here for a second. How many of you get political texts during the election season? I'm actually curious. Go ahead and if you got the little raise your hand function, if you know how to do that, go ahead and hit raise your hand. I'd love to see. Yeah, every hand's popping up just about. We all get the text just about. How many of you get mailers? And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand on all of these, but we get mailers. How many of you hear ads on the radio? How many of you get the little social media pop-ups? How many of you get an email? I personally don't get any emails from any of those political stuff, but I do get the text messages. I do get the mailers. They hang the little things on my doorknob. My wife and I are avid Today Show fans, and every morning when we sit down and drink a cup of coffee during election season, I'm seeing ads. So you may get all of them. You may only get one of them. You may get a few different channels that you're receiving these ads from. But what's happening on the back end is the segmentation. They are tailoring the communication in a way that increases the probability of engagement while also saving time, saving resources like money. They're not trying to reach a persona in a way that's a low probability. We think when we really think about communication and engagement, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to engage with us, whether it's our email, whether it's our socials, whatever it is. There is not a 100% foolproof method to get everybody to engage. You could send a text out or an email out offering somebody $1 million. First thing that's going to go through their head is skepticism. Hey, this is a scam. I'm not clicking this. I'm not engaging with this. So there is no foolproof method, but you're going to hear me say a lot about increasing the probability. If we're spending time, we're spending resources, what we want to do is we want to increase that probability of someone engaging. We don't want to spend time and efforts on something that's a low probability based off who we're communicating with. So that kind of leads us to really it gives us a little background, and it leads us to the meat and potatoes of segmentation and personalization. And there are several tools and platforms available for you guys to help with this type of stuff in your communication efforts. Going back to my political ads example, how do they target me? There's several different methods out there. There's a lot of public information on people, and I'm going to show you one of them today. And I'm going to show you how you guys as a church could use this to communicate. And that's through a product of ours called Mission Insight, which compiles this consumer data information and builds a profile about a person, which you're going to see here in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And what you're looking at is called an Experian Mosaic Handbook. Now, you don't have to answer. You don't have to raise your hand. But think about, do you know who Experian is? Do you know what Experian does? They were not in the news a few years ago. It was a different one. There are 3 major credit bureaus in the United States of America. Experian, Equifax, and I believe TransUnion. All these companies know every single thing about us. Kind of crazy. They know our ages. They know our marital status. They know our household composition, kids, no kids, single, married. They know our length of residencies in our households. They know our ethnicity. They know our occupation. They know our means of transport. How do we get to and from the activities that we do? They know our income. They know our credit behavior, all of that stuff. I could go on and on. And really, I'll kind of summarize it with this one sentence, and you can read it on this handbook here at the top. But essentially, they take over 300 data points on us, me and you, and they create a range of what they call consumer characteristics. With all of that data, they then compile Americans into different segments. And there are 71 of these. We're gonna dive into a few of these, but there are 71 individual segments. You can kind of see. I hope you guys can see my cursor. I'm circling A01 up here. So there's 71 of these, ranging from A01 all the way to S72. And a quick way to think of these, this doesn't completely define the person, but theoretically, you can kind of think of it as the A01s of the world, or some of the elitists, some of the richest folks in the United States. And then it works its way down to S71, which are typically some of, lower income, some of the poorest folks in our communities. And so it's not just income, though. I do want to stress that it's just a guide to know what we're looking at. This is a consumer profile. So it has income as a part of it, but it also takes into consideration ages. It takes into consideration family, all of these different types of things. So I've got a screenshot of one that we're going to see, and I'll dive into the table here in just a minute. And before I do this, I want to kind of iterate that this comes with our program called Mission Insight. I think I mentioned it, but I want you to know where I'm getting this from. So we'll dive into that in just a minute. But we're going to take a look at one of these segments, and this is called F22. These are our fast track couples. And actually, I'm going to pause for a second. I want to make sure that y'all can see my cursor. So if you can see my cursor on the screen, I'm moving it. Could you please raise your hand? I want to make sure as I'm pointing to things that we're all seeing it. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So this segment is called Fast Track Couples. Who are we? Over 50% of these people are between the ages 31 and 35 years old. Almost a quarter, so a fourth of these folks have a household income between $100,000 and $125,000. Almost 90%, so 9 out of 10 F22s that you were to come across in the public sector own a home. Now, this isn't super relevant to the market segmentation that we're talking about, but I've shown this enough times that I know everybody's eyes went all over the screen, and so I wanted to clarify what you were looking at. So I'm going to bring your attention to what is actually pertinent to our conversation today. And that is this channel preferences section over here. This channel preferences, you're going to see 6 logos. We're going to start at the top left, work our way right, and then work our way down, and then right again. And I'll use my cursor. So this first logo is a TV. Second logo is a letter indicating snail mail. Second logo is it looks like an old school radio. The fourth logo is text message bubble. The next logo is email. The next logo is like a social media like, a little thumbs up button. What I want you to know about this is you see numbers below each of these little icons. Those numbers indicate the likelihood of someone engaging with something that's delivered to them through that method of communication. An important note here is 100 is a baseline. So if it goes under 100, the probability is lower. If it goes over 100, the probability of engagement is higher. Now, we still have to be relevant to them in their messaging and our wordsmithing, like I mentioned earlier, that I probably can't help you with, because that definitely increases the likelihood of engagement. But in terms of just pure channel preference, how they want to be communicated with, this number indicates that. So let's think about it for a second. These are F22s, fast track couples. They're typically between 31 and 35 years old. 50% of the time they are. 90% of the time they own their own home. 50% of them have at least one person in the household as a child. So if your church is hosting an event or doing something that targets a F22 persona, what does this tell us? Social media is not the way to reach them. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but that's not this persona's preferred method of communication. And this is not data that ACS Technologies came up with. I kind of want to reiterate that while we're here. This is Experian Consumer Report data, an organization that has data on every single household in the United States. Public sectors, public secular companies use this information to market to me and you. But 30, these people, it's well below 100. We're not going to reach them. So how are we going to reach them? Text message. They have an index score of 346. Remember, 100 is our baseline. Anything over that is higher probability. That's a very high probability because the numbers almost tripled the baseline. So, let's, while we're here, talk a little bit about church growth. VBS, I told you we're going to use this example a little bit later down the road. So now's that time. I would imagine, and I may have already given this, but most of you guys, if not all, I may just say that I've worked with enough churches that I may say all of you do some sort of vacation Bible school, either at your church or you partner with another church. You're involved in some way. I think back to really when I was a youth within my youth group. We had 2 church buses. We'd ride around town to neighborhoods. We'd put pamphlets in mailboxes, things like that to promote. And maybe you guys don't have a resource available to you guys like that. So maybe you're planning on spending money on mailings, or you're going to do ad campaigns through social media. If you're going to be spending money, you're going to be spending resources. What we want to do is increase your probability of reaching your intended audience. And so I'm going to leave this Experian handbook for a second. And I'm going to take you inside of Mission Insight. I just want you to see kind of the possibilities out there for segmentation that you guys have. So Mission Insight, our program, allows me to come in and I want to draw a shape, because we've got data that tells us, I think it's somewhere between 60 and 70% of people want less than a 15-minute drive to church. We did a study called the American Belief Study Survey that told us that. So what I'm going to do is, rather than doing like a 5-mile radius, I'm going to put in a travel polygon. And you guys will see what that does in just a second. But I'm going to select a point on the map. This is actually my home church, by the way. And I'm just going to start with 10 minutes. We're not going to do anything further than that. And I'm going to draw. It sounds a little funky to say. However, this red shade that you guys see is a 10-minute drive to the front door of this church. So when we're thinking about VBS, we're thinking about Vacation Bible School, we're wanting to promote Vacation Bible School, how can we use a tool like this to segment who we're speaking to? Well, we're already segmenting based off of a higher probability that we know people want less than a 15-minute drive to church. That's one example of a segment. Now I'm going to use this program to run a report, and I'm going to run something called an executive insight report. And I've already ran one, so I'm not going to run it again. I'm going to flip over to it. And this executive insight report has a ton of demographic data on here, but in the purpose and the spirit of segmentation and communication, we're going to stick to this as one page. This page gives me the dynamics of the people within a 10-minute drive. So now I can start really thinking about how I tailor communication. So if I look, the second most populous Mosaic segment, and once again, the Mosaic segment are the things that we just showed in that handbook, that consumer profile. But the second most populous Mosaic segment is C13, booming with confidence, philanthropic sophisticates. Index score is 400, which means this is 4 times the national average of where they fit in our population. They've got 4 times national average within that 10-minute drive. So let's hop over. I actually have the Mosaic handbook up, and let's go to C13. Let's take a peek at it. How would we promote Vacation Bible School to these people? Because they're one of the most populous groups in our area. Well, the Mosaic handbook tells us that these people are typically between 66 and 75 years old. If they have kids, their kids, it's a very low percent. 2.7% of these folks have kids within 13 to 18 age range. So these probably aren't the people that we're going to send letters to promoting Vacation Bible School for their kids. But how can we start to segment and personalize messaging? Grandkids. These folks are in the later stages of their career, probably early retiree. They have a household income above the national average. So they probably have grandkids that may live near them, may not. But we could communicate, hey, we're having a Vacation Bible School. We would love if you would bring your kids or grandkids on this day, this time. And how are we going to communicate that with them? It's not through radio. Remember, our baseline's 100. This is a 3. Very low probability. Not through television, not through text message. The way that we are going to most likely engage with them is going to be through an email. You can see the index scores of 222. Through social media, they're above the index score. And then email. I'm sorry, snail mail, 125. So that's an example of understanding demographics and using a tool to pull this data so that you guys can start personalizing communications more effectively. Let's take a look at one more. We're going to look at D18. That's the third most populous Mosaic segment within the 10-minute drive of this church. So if I scroll down, bear with me for just a second. D18, suburban nightlife, upper established couples and families living mainly in metro cities. Over a third of these are typically between the age of 51 and 65. 90% of them are homeowners. Their kids are typically in the age range of 10 to 12. And this is just a highlight. I mean, if I scroll down, there's a lot more data on these people that we can use. But I just wanted you guys to know that. So these are the people that we're actually going to target. Bring your kids to our Vacation Bible School. How are we going to communicate with them? These folks don't communicate through email, and they don't prefer text message. What they do prefer is television. That may be out of your budget for a commercial. It may not be in your church's mission or vision to do a commercial. However, social media, we got 175 index score. So these folks are more likely to respond through some sort of social ad or promotion from you guys' church. And then, of course, we have snail mail over here as well. So, that's just a small portion of what our program does. We're really kind of focused on this segmentation and personalization. But Mission Insight, helps you guys understand internal audiences, external audiences. You guys can tailor your ministry, once again, personalization, through a program like this. If you're in an area that, the data says you got low income families in a particular neighborhood over here, well, great. You've got a map through Mission Insight that you can say, this is the park that we're going to do a diaper drive or a backyard Bible school at a park. If your church is hosting something during the day and you're looking for members that live close that could potentially volunteer, you can upload your members into Mission Insight, plot them on a map, and download a file that shows you all the members that live within a 5-minute drive of your church. So there's a lot of stuff here. And really, that's how you can tailor communications to different folks, based off of this personalization, segmentation concept that we're talking about. Now, the question is, what about the method in which we communicate to them with? So we know these folks like to receive text messages, or we know these folks like to receive emails. What do you use to communicate to those folks with, and how does that further help you through the data that it can provide? For the majority of you, that's probably your church management system. ACS Technologies, I'm sure we've probably got a lot of folks in here that use Realm. And that's what I'm going to kind of demo here today, and how you can use something like Realm. So I'm going to go ahead and change over to Realm. I'm going to go to reporting, and I'm going to run something called a custom query. For those of you not familiar with this is just simply a way for me to search my database. So using Realm, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a search for families. We're going to stay on this VBS theme if you can't tell. But we're going to search for people that have kids, and we want to display the parents. So we're going to run a search here. Family member count is greater than 2. And there's different ways to do this, by the way. And I'm also going to say family position is equal to head or spouse, or adult 1, adult 2, however you guys' data is set up. So simply what this search is pulling is everybody that's got more people in their family than 2, and we want only the parents. Show results. This gives us 264 people. Now, I can just select an action up here, and I can send these folks blindly just an email. Hey, Vacation Bible School is coming up. We would love for you to, bring your kids, volunteer, whatever you want to say. And once again, that's not bad. It doesn't cost you anything right here, like through our program of, if you're sending this email directly through Realm, it doesn't cost you anything. So it doesn't hurt to do. But if you're sending this to Constant Contact, or you're paying for emails, what I would really encourage you to do is let's leverage the information that we know from Mission Insight or Experian or any other data software, and let's apply that to our church management system so that we can be more effective. So let's go in and make one adjustment to this search. And I'm going to add a criteria in here. And I'm going to say, not only do I want parents, but I want parents that are between the ages of 31, 35. Show me my results. My number up here went from 260 to 22. Well, if I leverage the information I just learned, these folks typically respond to text messages better than they do emails. So using your church management system, whether that's Realm or something else, find a way to send a text message. I'm going to send a one-way text, and I'm going to send a message out that, hey, VBS registration has started. We'd love for you to be a part of it this year, whatever that may be. Now, what I can do is I can go back and say, all right, so we sent a message to our 31 through 35-year-olds. Now let's leverage some other information we learned. Let's go 51 to 59 years old. Show results. And now I've got 46 people in my church that fit this criteria. And we know, based off of that Experian data, the probability of engagement is higher with email. So now these folks, I may send an email to. We don't want you guys to have to pay for text messages if it's not going to work. So that's how segmentation, personalization really comes into play And this is how you start to do this stuff on a day in and day out basis. Um, one thing of note here is this is your church that we're talking about. We're not talking about the community at this point. We're talking about your church, the data that's in your church management system. So you know these people, they know you. Let's ask them, how would you like to be communicated, with or by? Would you prefer email? Would you prefer text message? Do you want both? And all of those are fields that can be added in a program like this. And I can add in preferred communication is equal to email, letter, text. If I only want to send text messages, I can throw that in there. And so since this is your church, ask them. They'll provide. If you send me an email, my church sends me an email, it goes in my list of 2,000 emails that I never check. I need a text message. So once again, not to beat the dead horse, but personalization, segmentation is all key to effective communication. Now, I can kind of feel it. You're probably thinking, hey, this is for our church members, so this is great. However, how do we do this with our community? Well, to be truthful with you, we can only work with the data we have, the data that you guys have. And you probably don't have a ton of data on people outside of your church. That's why it's really important that you do two things. When people visit, have some sort of connect card or form, whatever preferred method is, that folks can provide you their information, phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses. And secondly, we're not always going to get everybody in our community to attend our church to give us that information. So at least get a tool that can provide you something like names and addresses. So if I hop back into Mission Insight for a second, I can use this public information to find people in my community who fit the criteria that I'm looking for. So, for an example of this, maybe I am looking for single parents. And we know they're in our community, but we don't know where they live. We don't have an address. We don't have names. How do we personalize a message to them? Well, not every program has something like this, but Mission Insight has something called Neighbor Center that I can come in and I can say, hey, show me all the people that are single and do have children in the household. And I can hit plot. And as I zoom in, you're going to see red dots. Those are the households that fit the criteria I just searched for. This is public information. This is not, we're not doing something, nefarious. I like to say this to every church organization that I work with when it comes to a program like this. Secular companies do this every single day because it's public information. They market to me, they market to you, they put things on shelves in certain stores that aren't in other stores because they know that the people that live in this area that shop here are going to buy this or that. If secular companies are going to do this to market to us and to communicate with us more effectively, why in the world would we as a church not do something like this to affect someone's eternity? And that's kind of my stance on this. That's why I've got a passion for this. So I wanted to, some people typically have that thought around this point in time. So I wanted to address that. But going down my example really quick. So we've identified where these folks live. Now, how do we contact them? Well, I can, once again, in Mission Insight, I can go in, I can purchase an address list. I've read and understand, accept the information. I want to do this based off of a polygon that I draw. Let's see if I can remember the address. 5250. So this is the address of my church. And I want to draw an area on a map where I saw a high grouping of single parents. There were none over here, by the way. So I'm not gonna search that list. I'm gonna come over here in this segment. And what I can do is just draw a simple shape around these neighborhoods. say next. And I only want to pull the people that are single, and I want to pull the people that have children in their household. I've got 93 people. This is an example of how we can start to personalize, um, folks that we want to see in our church. We want to see their lives change. And so when we go a step further in personalization, remember I mentioned the verbiage that we use. When you communicate with these people, you could have some messaging in there around single parenting. You can have ministry programs around being a single parent. And that's how you start to communicate and start to leverage this data. Now I'm running out of time. I don't actually see her, but I can feel Kelsey looking at me because I think this is supposed to be 45 minutes, but I apologize. I'm so passionate about this topic. So lastly, on our agenda, before we hop into Q&A, let's talk about a few key metrics to track. How do we see the efforts that we're doing? How do we see the fruits of that labor? There are different methods that you guys can use depending on the programs that you're using, like Realm or other church management systems. Some systems out there have things like open rates on emails, click rates. You can see engagement levels, where people scrolled to on a newsletter, on an email. You can see on social medias when you run advertising campaigns. You can see how many impressions it got. So if you're doing some of this stuff already, you've got your baseline. Hey, 20% of the people we send this email to open it. Now that we start implementing some of this, do we see that percentage increase? And if not, then either the data is wrong or we're not doing something right. And I would, these large Fortune 500 companies are using the same data. So I would probably venture to say the data is not incorrect, but we can start to evaluate our area or things just a little different. You guys can, look at your events like Vacation Bible School. You know how many people attended last year. You know how many people attended 2 years ago. If we do some sort of targeted method of communication, do we see an increase in registrations? Those are all what we call in the secular world or business world KPIs, key performance indicators to tell us if what we're doing is working or not. And these metrics, not only help you guys evaluate your current strategy, but it's going to give you data to inform you guys on future communications. It's going to provide you information, for future programs at your church as we start to personalize and tailor the messaging. So that's what I've got today for you guys. I really hope it was impactful. Hang on, this is not the last slide. I've got a few things that I want to run through with you guys. We are going to do a Q&A, but if somebody has to leave, I want you to see this contact information. You can send an email to results@acst.com. You can call that number. You can visit our website. If you have specific questions about anything, how this could be applicable to your church, reach out to us. We're here to help, and we want to know how we can help. So reach out to us if you have any questions or you want to explore some of this further. I'll leave it there for 5 more seconds. And lastly, before the Q&A, go to our socials. Follow us on social media. We've got Instagrams, we've got Twitter or X, whatever it's called nowadays, Facebook, LinkedIn. We got all these different communication channels. We'd love to connect with you guys and see, what all is going on in the churches that we work with. And I'm going to incentivize you to go here because we're going to offer a $50 Amazon gift card. We're going to at random pull the people that attended this, and we're going to select someone and we'll send that to you. But we're going to announce that first on our social media. So make sure you go like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'd love to connect with you through that. So I'm going to go ahead and pause now. Question and answer time. Give me just a minute to find the Zoom. Give me just a minute to quit sharing my screen and let's just talk. All right. So there, I probably should have signified this. By the way, there's a chat function, but there's also a Q&A function. If you got questions, please use the Q&A because I can see what I've answered. I can mark those as answered. The chat just kind of comes through. All right, I've got a question. What's the best way to gather demographic, psychographic information and preferences? How can we enter that into Realm? That is a very good question. We don't have to just apply it to Realm. Yeah, I know that a few of you probably use other church management systems. Realm does have a useful tool in this manner. But rather than pulling this information into Realm, which you can do, I mean, you can do a search on your congregation and figure out, what mosaic segment they belong to, and you could make that a profile field. But Realm actually has a tool in there that when you go to your reports section, there's a report built out called Export to Mission Insight, if you have Mission Insight. And it will build out a list, a CSV file of all the fields that are needed, and you can import that list into Mission Insight, and you can map them on the map, and then you can start running those reports on congregants. So to answer that question, you can pull it into your CHMS. What I would suggest is rather than pulling it into our CHMS or your CHMS, let's put the information into Mission Insight. Mission Insight's updated. People's jobs change, their spending habits change, their mosaic profiles change. We update them every 6 months. So anyway, I would suggest taking it to the product itself rather than bringing that information in, but you can do either. How practical is Mission Insight for small congregations, and what is the cost? That is a great question as well. So we have literally a ginormous span of users of Mission Insight. We have the largest of the large. We work with national denominational offices that purchase Mission Insight licenses for national studies, so it can handle that large of a study. And then we have churches that are home churches. I can't think of a better tool for a better sized church than a home church, for Mission Insight, because as a home church, you're trying to identify where are people located, who are the people that we're targeting. So yes, I would say it's feasible for a small congregation. The important piece is to have someone on staff that can think this way, and not everybody has that. And that may sound weird to say, but not everybody has the ability to think through this. You just got to have someone on staff that can handle that. In addition to that same question, someone asked, what's the cost? And then someone else just asked the cost. It's different. That's where I know you don't want this answer probably. But I would say either call or send an email, because our pricing is different, based off of what you already use with us, versus if you're buying it standalone, versus the amount of miles of radius that you need for a study. So it just varies so much. I can't even begin to give a ballpark figure on a cost. That's where we would work with you. Our church uses Realm. Can we create a group within the membership side of that attends our Wednesday evening dinners? Can we set up a text format to notify attendees of dinners in advance? Reminders, the equivalent to the communications your company did to keep this webinar in our minds. Can it be automated? David, there's some aspects of that in Realm. I won't say that all those aspects are there. So you can certainly create a group for your Wednesday evening dinners. You can certainly send a text, to that group. So you run a search on the group, send a text to those participants. I know we have scheduled emails. I don't know off the top of my head if you can schedule a text to be sent out. We can get back with you on that. And then the auto reminders. Realm doesn't quite have the auto reminders on text messaging. I do know that. I will say, if you are looking for more automation, we have a program called Growth Method, GROWTH, that it literally exists to be a data automation tool for churches. So you can put people in what we call tracks, and that track signifies kind of like what you experience getting follow-up emails for this. Hey, after 1 day, send a text. After 4 days, send another text. After 2 weeks, phone call, whatever it may be. So Realm itself doesn't have that, but Growth does. What do we use for this webinar? We're using Zoom. We have a company license for Zoom.
Hey, Colin, it looks like there's another question over in the chat versus the Q&A. You can see that.
Let's take a peek. Is there a simple chart that shows the many segments and their preferred method of receiving communications? So that Experian handbook that I showed you, it doesn't give like a one-pager that says, hey, list all 71 out and say their preferred method, because it's always going to want to show you each method, because you may not have the accessibility to do the best. So it's always going to want to show you the different ways, and then just the engagement preferences. You can, rather than diving into all 71, there are like groupings of those segments. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 19 groupings that those segments fall under, and you can look at them from a grouping perspective on what their typical preferred communication preference is. It's just not as granular. But if you're trying to work through so much data, you do have access to at least narrow it down to 19 different pages rather than 71. I hope that makes sense. How can we obtain the Experian handbook? That is a really good question. So the Experian handbook is proprietary information to Experian. Your organization would have to either go directly to Experian and like purchase it. I don't even know what that costs. Don't even know if you can do that, to be honest with you. But you get access to it because we have built in with Mission Insight, we're pulling Experian data. So they provide it to anyone that uses Mission Insight. So you would have access to it from there. I don't know if you can go buy that a la carte from them. I probably doubt you can, and if you can, it's probably super expensive. Laura, you are hitting me with some great questions. I want everyone to hear this. Laura said she's used the Mosaic system before in a different professional setting. Is there a way to determine which profile types are most receptive to church communications? Do you have that information that you can share? That is a fantastic question. So we don't necessarily have something that says, hey, A01s are most receptive. But we do have something. We partnered with a guy that studies these Experian segments, and he's also kind of a theologian, got like an MDiv, I believe, Master of Divinity from somewhere. And we have a guide based off of all of those Mosaic segments that relates it to church. So it doesn't necessarily say, hey, an A01's more receptive, but it will tell you that A01 prefers a contemporary or a traditional service over like a contemporary service. So you can start to more identify, all right, this is what our church does. This is who is in our area. Who's in our area doesn't necessarily mesh with what we do. So let's figure out the people in our area and figure out what their preferences are. And maybe we have a traditional service or we have a contemporary service. I mean, it goes down not just service types, but it also discusses things like How do they like their sermons? Do they want it topical? So we're going to do a biblical sermon on parenting, or do they like for it to be is doctrinal a word? Just based off of doctrine. So we're going to go through the book of Philippians. So it starts to nail down those preferences based off of their Mosaic segment. And anyway, so it doesn't give you who's more receptive, but it starts to allow you guys to understand more what these folks are looking for. And then, of course, you tailor stuff to increase the probability. And then she followed that up. Does that church study look at the denominations and the different profile types lean towards? I don't know. I have not spent near as much time in that because it really is 71 different PDFs that are multiple pages long. So I don't know that like the back of my hand, kind of how I know the rest of Mission Insight. I do know there is some stuff like an ecclesiastical perspective in there of understanding what they expect from a church, and obviously different denominations kind of do things differently. I will tell you though, from a standpoint of who uses this product, we have literally any type of denomination you think of. Catholic dioceses use this. Catholic churches use this. Just about every Protestant denomination, United Methodist, Global Methodist, Southern Baptist, Independent Baptist, Lutheran, so on and so Presbyterian. We have everyone using this, so I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it narrows it down to one because it's something that can be used by all. I also saw the person that asked about the Mosaic Handbook. They mentioned that you can access it. You can find it online. That's funny. I actually went and looked for it the other day and couldn't find it, but I appreciate that. All right, we got like 2 minutes left. If anybody has any last questions, I'd love to answer them. If you need more information, I'm here to help. This is why I exist. It's to serve you guys. All right, I'm not seeing anything else come in. I think Kelsey answered some questions on when the recording will come out to you guys. So be on the lookout for that. Be sure to share that with any other staff members you think that this would be relevant to. And lastly, I just want to wish you guys great Easter. I hope that you guys' programs and services go well. I hope that you guys see fruits of the labor that's put in. I know it's a lot of work, and we have an opportunity. I say we as a fellow believer, we have an opportunity this Sunday to be in front of a lot of people that don't typically come to church. So I hope everything goes well with you guys. Thank you all, and thanks for attending.